the final girl serves as a character to root for, with their general physical disadvantage over their attacker requiring them to use their cunning above all else in order to survive. It therefore goes without saying that the overwhelming majority of final girls end up enduring a hell of a lot. These final girls absolutely saw some stuff throughout their ordeals, from witnessing their friends and families being dismantled by a murderous maniac, to getting put through the physical ringer themselves and basically ensuring they'll never be the same again. With that in mind, I'm Ellie with What Culture, and here are horror movie final girls who suffered the most. Mia Allen, Evil Dead. Much as Evil Dead fans were extremely skeptical about the 2013 remake, it ultimately turned out to be a respectful and hella gory new take that benefited enormously from its appealingly gutsy protagonist, Mia Allen. Even before the supernatural shenanigans kick off, Mia is having a tough time of it. She's a heroin addict who is being brought out to an isolated cabin to overcome her addiction with the help of some friends. Ultimately, this ends up being the least of her problems, once one of her pals reads from the Necronomicon, or the Book of the Dead, and accidentally awakens a fleet of demonic entities. In addition to battling brutal withdrawal symptoms, Mia gets possessed by one of the entities in a disturbingly invasive fashion. If you know, you know. This results in Mia basically losing her mind, scolding herself in the shower, attacking her friends, vomiting up blood, and even cutting her tongue in half. She's then buried alive, revived with a defibrillator, and even forced to rip her own arm off when it's trapped underneath a car, before finally destroying the demonic force once and for all. Sally Hardesty, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There are few horror movie images more iconic or indelible than that of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's blood-soaked protagonist Sally Hardesty maniacally laughing euphorically while hitching a ride away from Leatherface at the end of the movie. Simply put, that is the face of someone who has seen a lot. As if dealing with a creepy hitchhiker wasn't even enough drama for one day, Sally, her brother, and their friends end up being picked off by a family of cannibals. Sally is forced to deal with seeing her friends murdered by Leatherface in supremely brutal fashion. Worst of all, her brother, who is run through with a chainsaw right in front of her. Even when Sally thinks she's escaped to safety, she ends up being dragged back to the Sawyer family's house, where she's bound, gagged, and tortured over the course of the night. And yet, the most horrendous indignity of all might be having blood sucked from her finger by the grotesque, desiccated Grandpa Sawyer. Sally's experience is harrowing enough that a good portion of the audience will want to go take a shower after watching what she went through. Kirsty Cotton, Hellraiser. Kirsty Cotton might well be the most underrated final girl in mainstream horror, especially considering everything she endures in the original Hellraiser film alone. Learning that your stepmother has been luring men back to her home in order to feed their souls to your skinless uncle, with whom she's been conducting an affair, and they set your father up to be killed no less, would mess even the most sane person up. But poor Kirsty additionally has to contend with the extra-dimensional demons known as the Cenobites, ultimately striking a deal with them to save herself in exchange for returning her escaped Uncle Frank to their hellish clutches. In the sequel, Hellbound Hellraiser 2, Kirsty has been institutionalized and attempts to use the Lament configuration box to resurrect her father. She again encounters the wrath of the Cenobites though, yet barely lives to fight another day. Kirsty makes her final appearance in Hellraiser 6, where she's cheated on by her husband Trevor, who also attempted to kill her using the Lament configuration. However, the ever-resourceful Kirsty bargains for her life with the Cenobites once more, by agreeing to sacrifice 5 souls in exchange for her own. 3 of her hubby's mistresses, his friend, and then Trevor himself, before framing him for all the other murders. Kirsty is far more of a complex character than most of the more straight-laced final girls on this list, but given the countless familial betrayals she's suffered through, it's scarcely believable she'd ever trust anyone again for the rest of her life. Laurie Strode, Halloween. How much Halloween's Laurie Strode has suffered depends on whether you include the now discarded continuity of the original sequels. We can all agree that Laurie endured a horrendous night fleeing the Shape in the original movie, while Halloween 2 revealed the terrible truth that Michael Myers is her brother, and Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, opted to kill Laurie off-screen after Jamie Lee Curtis decided not to return. This tragically left her daughter Jamie Lloyd without a mother, who was then herself murdered by Michael years later. These These events were eventually wiped out or retconned by Halloween H2O 20 years later, however, which brought Laurie back as a traumatized alcoholic who faked her death. Though the film seemed to end with Laurie finally killing Michael, we learn in the 8th movie, Halloween Resurrection, that Michael switched places with an injured paramedic, so Laurie inadvertently decapitated an innocent man with an axe. Yikes. Resurrection also committed the worst sin of all by killing Laurie off on screen when Michael throws her off the roof of a psychiatric hospital. The continuity was finally reset with 2018's Halloween, which, while reinventing Laurie as a badass grey-haired survivalist, also painted her as someone unable to move on from the trauma of Michael's rampage 40 years prior. We learn that she's been divorced twice, is an alcoholic, and previously lost custody of her daughter Karen as a result. Ellen Ripley, Alien. Alien's Ellen Ripley is rightly held up as one of the toughest and most resourceful heroines in the history of not just horror, but cinema as a whole. In the first film, she's forced to make tough decisions and employ her sly cunning to survive, all while her fellow Nostromo crew members are summarily picked off by the alien xenomorph. In Aliens, Ripley awakens from cryostasis almost 60 years later to learn that her daughter Amanda died while she was asleep, and beyond that, she has to contend with a grilling from the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, who are none too happy that she scuttled the Nostromo while making her escape. Ripley is then convinced to join a group of Marines to check on the terraforming colony Hadley's Hope, where she encounters a fleet of xenomorphs and again survives alongside surrogate daughter Newt and Corporal Hicks. But at the start of Alien 3, Newt and Hicks die, and to pile on the heartbreak, she's impregnated with an alien queen embryo, forcing her to kill herself by jumping into a giant furnace at the film's end. Yet even this isn't the end for Ripley. Despite being dead, she's brought back to life as a clone who, due to the xenomorph's ultra-convenient genetic memory, retains some of the original Ripley's memories. And that's all she wrote for now. The original Ripley is dead, her attempts to end the Xenos are futile, and she now lives as a genetically enhanced clone. Suffering isn't even the word. Sidney Prescott, Scream. For the record, this entry will only cover the first 4 Scream movies. Perhaps the only final girl who can plausibly attest to having more debilitating trust issues than Hellraiser's Kirsty, Sidney Prescott has basically done the rarest of things for a slasher movie protagonist: survive 3 straight sequels. Where to even begin with Sidney? Her mother Maureen was raped and murdered a year before the events of the first film, where her friends and classmates are killed off by Ghostface, and she very nearly bites it herself. The first Ghostface is revealed to be her own boyfriend Billy, in league with her friend Stu, and Billy also killed Sid's mother. This leaves Sid racked with guilt that she pointed the finger at the wrong man, Cotton Weary, for her mother's death. In Scream 2, it all happens again, resulting in Sid's boyfriend Derek being murdered by new killers Mickey and Mrs. Loomis. In the third film, she attempts to sift through her own trauma by working as a crisis counsellor for women, though is brought out of hiding when her mother's mysterious past is raked over by a new killer. This time, the killer turns out to be her secret half-brother Roman, who, after being rejected by his mother Maureen, convinced Billy, whose father was having an affair with Maureen, to kill her, setting up the events of the first 2 films. And finally, Scream 4 saw Sid return to Woodsboro to publicise her new self-help book, and again faced off against Ghostface, who was none other than her damn cousin Jill and her psychotic classmate Charlie. Oh, and Sid is accused of being Ghostface herself and has to witness the brutal murder of her aunt Kate. By the end of Scream 4, Sidney has gone through absolute hell, and additionally has directly or indirectly killed 5 people herself: Stu, Billy, Mickey, Mrs. Loomis, and Jill. Anna, Martyrs. In terms of literal, visceral suffering, it's difficult to top Martyrs protagonist Anna, a final girl in basically the most literal sense of the word. Anna is an abuse survivor who has to witness the brutal suicide of her childhood friend Lucy, and things only get worse from there. Anna is eventually captured and imprisoned by a secret society of people who perform systematic torture experiments on young women, who they call martyrs, which they hope will put the women into a trance-like state which allows them to glimpse into the afterlife. After being brutally beaten, Anna is put into the final stage of the martyrdom process, being skinned alive and consequently entering a euphoric state, much to the excitement of her torturers. The film ends with Anna in a catatonic state, and while still alive in the biological sense of the word, what life is it really?